A few things regarding the keys themselves and the key tops are, especially with the celluloid ones, you can see actually little flecks inside of these. I'm not sure what Blickensderfer used for fillers in addition to the straight, typical celluloid. But sometimes you'll see that coming up at the surface, and it pretty much indicates that that it's decomposing a bit, and eventually celluloid will turn to dust. Anyway, the idea is to prevent that as long as possible. So in cleaning celluloid, what you want to do is not soak it. You don't want it to absorb much moisture. You don't want to seal it with wax, or even semichrome will seal it, and because it has to be able to continually outgas as it continues to degrade. This key was one of the ones that was broken on this one, chipped out, and fortunately I have the chips. And being a plastic, it actually, the way to weld it back together is not with a typical glue, but it's a plastic cement, and this is just testers. It's just a model cement. It works quite well. The other recommended ways of doing it are actually just use straight acetone on it. Wet the area with acetone, put it together, and actually clamp it for a week or two, which there's a few reasons why that I don't want to do that. One is the mess. If you get it on here, it's going to start to melt it in all different places. Patience, I don't like to let something run that long. And the third one is I don't know how good the bond is without testing it, basically breaking it. So I'm not going to do that. This can be put back on the key itself, just using the plastic cement also. Put it down there, and in about 20 minutes it'll be pretty well set up. But you can see a little bit of the key still sticking out here. And what my concern is with something like this is that if there's any force applied to it, that it's going to basically try to pop that off. So what I've done on the previous ones that I already did was I just take a small file and I open that up a little bit side to side and in depth. And after I've removed material all over it, I can put it on here. It's actually easier if it's already glued on, but I'll put it on there, and then I can test it in place and make sure that it goes on there without any gaps. It's nice and clean, which this one appears that it will be. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to apply a little bit of the cement to this piece, make sure this is good and clean first. And then I'll apply the model cement to the actual piece there. Not a huge amount of it, because I don't want to do a lot of melting. I'll put that on there, and I'll just let it sit and adhere to it. The second thing I'll do is once that's adhered, I'll either put the cement on here or both, and light them out very carefully. I like these little tiny swabs that come to a point. I was able to get these at Hobby Lobby. They're very inexpensive, but they're great at applying oil or glue to any small places. So what I like to do is I like to take a thin strip of electrical tape because it stretches, and I use that as my clamp. So once this is together, I'll cut a very thin strip of the electrical tape, and then I'll stretch it across at an angle so that it's actually holding right where I want it to. And I'll make sure there's no ridge anywhere underneath that electrical tape. I'll let that sit for 20 minutes or half an hour, and then I'll carefully remove it from both sides so I don't risk pulling this out. It should be set up by then, and then I'll let it sit for quite a while longer. That seems to work really well. I did it on 3 other keys, but I wanted to save this one till the end so that I could actually show it. A couple other things about the celluloid is it's, like I say, his celluloid actually seems to hold up fairly well. I don't know what extra fillers or additives he did. It was a, it was a fairly mature process by that time, since the celluloid was invented in the 1860s. But at any rate, the recommended ways of cleaning them, there's only two that I know of. One is, this is for museums, they actually take just very lukewarm water, put some Dawn dish soap in it, dish liquid, and with a clean cloth, don't soak it, just clean it. And that seemed to work fairly well, but what I found works better is another thing that curators use that sounds kind of disgusting. You either take a swab or a clean piece of soft cotton and apply a little saliva to it and just wipe around it. It's surprising how well that cleans. And I've done that. It works quite well. So that one I'd recommend. That's what I've done on this typewriter, and I'll post some pictures. Anyway, that's what I recommend. And the other thing is, when you're polishing these, this one's already been cleaned up. The base material, how well they prep that determines how smooth and shiny the nickel is. This looks like raw material underneath the nickel. It was never a mirror, obviously, because you can see the grain and all the imperfections in the metal. So when I polish these, I just remove the grime first with a little bit of naphtha degreaser to get most of this off, but I make sure I don't get any on that celluloid. And then once I do that, I just take some semichrome or some flits and just lightly polish it until it looks presentable. Not much of it shows. The top of it shows more than anything else, so that's really where you want to get most of the corrosion off. It's nice to have the sides as clean as possible, but if I go too far on this, where I've got a little bit of pitting here in the nickel, it's only going to make it worse. So I'm going to avoid that. I just polish them to a point where I think they're presentable. And overall, they'll match the rest of the machine. So anyway, I'll continue on this, and once I get that glued up, we'll go back to this. One other little tip: don't press down on here like this. You risk breaking the celluloid off. When you're cleaning these two flat surfaces, you can put them on your bench like that. But the rest of this, you want to do it freehand. You don't want to risk bending this, and you don't want to risk having that come off, have the key top come off, so or break it or chip it out like this one was from shipping. So anyway, that's about it. I'll continue on this, and then we'll get back to assembly. I have the first side, the keys lined up in order here. So the way I'm inserting them is there's a bar right here that they have to hook onto. I made sure that they're all clean in that area. Lower them down, and then the end of the key itself, it's easier if you move that forward, it has to come up through these little slots here and then down through the comb. And I'll just do that all the way across. I'll do the space bar when I get to the middle, and then proceed. I'm going to go from left to right. That's the way I've always done it. And once that is done, then this top comb goes on. Then I can turn it over and start inserting the springs. When you're putting in the space bar and you hook it over this same bar that the keys are hooked over, you'll also have to move this shuttle that space bar actuates to actuate the escapement. You'll have to push that back about flush to the front of the casting itself, because it normally is sitting out here someplace before you do that. And that way you can, this little leg that is riveted to the space bar, that has to go in this slot. And if you don't push this back, the slot won't be exposed to the position where you can do that. So that's an important feature. The other thing that you want to do is this part here that was missing on this typewriter. That has to be fairly close to these the hooks on the ends of these keys and the space bar. You don't want it touching it because that won't allow the springs, these light little springs, to raise the keys to their home position, their natural position. But you don't want it too far away because you don't want these to drop off of here. They shouldn't want to drop off there naturally, but in transport or anything else, they will if this rail is not on here. So basically keep them, I'd say less than 1 millimeter away from the these hooked ends of the keys, but not so close that they'll interfere with them. The 2 frames here that hold that actually rotate the wheel, drive that mechanism, those have a different spring than the keys do. The spring for those has a hook, and basically it just goes on to what looks like a rivet sticking out. You basically hook the rivet-like thing, and then the end of it just goes in these grooves here. And the springs will too, and a few of the springs share the grooves with these springs because there aren't enough grooves otherwise. And then this one actually goes to the space bar, and that's also a heavier spring. I want to make sure the keys are all nice and leveled up, and make sure they have all their preload and they come back like they should. And I see that I've got a couple that aren't, so I guess a little weak. I'm going to turn it back over and look at those, see how the springs are on them, maybe put different springs on them because sometimes some of the springs are a bit weak. Installing this top frame sounds simple, but it's not quite as simple as it sounds. I'm going to use this to push the carriage release bail and basically the shuttle for the space bar into the rear position. So basically as it's shifting over, that brings this piece here back, which sometimes it needs to be done. I've had it work either way, but this one's giving me a little bit of a headache. This piece here, which has to do with the shifting mechanism for going to your capitals and the other characters. That piece there has to sit on top of this back comb right here. And this piece here, which is also part of the shift mechanism, has to be up inside of this. So basically, and this frame here has to go in front of these 3 gear segments. So basically, you bring it in behind, you make sure that this hole is over to be in line with that hole. You bring that so that that little piece that's sitting on top of the comb goes on top of the comb, and you bring it forward so that you have that framework in front of those gear segments, and then you drop it down. And we'll see if the escapement works for the carriage. Nothing's getting hung up with the shift. Everything seems to be working. So now I've got to see if the type wheel lines up with the platen properly, because I did have to take these frames off, and that can change your positioning. But once that's done, we're back in business. I still have to do the feet, of course, and a little bit of cleanup and do a typing test. But yeah, she's becoming a typewriter again. Okay, when it's time to check the escapement and the function of everything, make sure you either have proper feet under it or you have it up on some kind of a lifter to get the bottom surface up off of your table or bench. The escapements will not work correctly if it's sitting flat with no feet. So everything seems to be working well on this one. What I like to do is I like to put 2 pieces of paper rather than 1, because the platen is pretty much hard as a rock now, and it just gives a little more cushion for my type wheel. So generally what I like to do is type in the basically the model number, the type wheel itself, the serial number, the date, and the sentence, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And then I do every character, uppercase, lowercase, and the figures too. So right now I'm just going to type in what I always type in, and then I'll demonstrate it using just the run across all the characters so that you can see it working properly. And there's the end result. I'm not sure why I got this little ghosting here. I think that's actually from the scale probably. But it proves that the letters are all in sequence properly. Everything is working correctly, and it's a decent copy. I'll do a nicer one to display the machine with, because I always leave one of these displayed in the machine so that it has all the records of the machine, a description of what it is, and it shows what it can do. I actually used carbon paper between two sheets on this one so that it would take the ink and ink roller out of the equation, because the modern ink is water-based and it's really not great. And so anyway, that's it. It's perfectly capable. It does everything it's supposed to, and I'm very happy with this machine. I think it looks pretty good for 130 years old, and it functions very well.